Mic check, 1, 2. Let's see if I can fix this really quick. Mic check, 1, 2. There we go, guys. So sorry. Good evening. This is Simon with TRADERTOUGH and Trading Perform Coaching. I am doing a quick trade review. This is fast. This is really for my own purposes because I want to improve for tomorrow. And I need to see where I did well, where I did poorly, and how I can improve, right? So I'm primarily a profile trader, and I use order flow to finalize my order entries and my final decision making. I use profile to kind of figure out where the market's going, and we go from there. So let's just kind of get started so we can see where we were and where we're going. So to start the day, number one, and before I get started, I got to post this up here. Here we go. Past performance, not indicative of future results. Substantial risk in trading derivatives. Please make sure you have a risk plan. You can lose all your money trading futures. Anyone who tells you this is easy is full of shit. It's the hardest job out there because you've got to be on the top of your game mentally to make this thing stick. That's the end of the deal right there. So number one, and moving through here quickly, we will, this will be short. So number one, we were gapping above yesterday's value. This is really important to me, right? Gapping up immediately brings my trend day up rules. Do we fill the gap? Do we fill half gap? Do we close below or test value? And can we trade back into prior day's high? That's kind of a quick and dirty checklist. And you can see, just looking at how the day unfolded, we ended up with a balanced day. But you can see if you pressed your shorts through the course of the day, the press at the end of the day ended up pushing and we closed near the high, even though I wouldn't call this a trend day up. The move technically closed near the high of the day. Two things that were making the day difficult right out of the gate is today and tomorrow is rollover to December contract. That's always a challenge because liquidity gets split between two contracts. If you read order flow, you're now going to have to go and figure out where that order flow is coming from. And then finally, what was above us to cause us challenges or difficulties? So the first thing that I pointed out was this 2902, although I was on the September contract today, giving the same equivalency to the December. The 2902 is the first thing standing in our way. And then this day got thrown out. So this is our next major level. And then this level right up here on top, 2912. And you can see we never made it to the 2908. We just ran out of juice. It was weird, right? We opened up and just balanced. And I think President Trump threw some water on the whole Chinese tariff talks that got us trending up overnight. And we just ran out of gas, right? So the question becomes, how do you trade that when it opens up and what are you looking for, right? So these were the key levels and we opened up. So now let's get rid of this chart because, wow, I don't know what that is, but we're going to get rid of it and go over to our range bars, okay? And what you will see here, erase all these lines. Okay. What this is these were the key levels that we're setting up before market. So you can see coming into overnight, that 2902 was the first level that I had. You can see that when we got there around 6 in the morning Central Time, we consolidated underneath for a little bit. We popped above, we backside tested, and then we continued. So that by the time we got to the open, obviously we've been trending up out of London. There's 8:30 in the morning. And that's our open. And most people, up until 2 weeks ago, if you saw that open, you'd go, hey, it's trend day up. And we were looking almost immediately for a long, if you were willing to trade in the first 30 minutes. I was not. And there's two reasons for that. I have been awful on risk management the last 2 days. I've had trades that were usually my favor that I let come all the way back. And I really just needed, the whole goal of today, my whole goal of tomorrow is to get specifically and very tightly on process, right? So that includes, I know my loss ratio is higher in the first 30 minutes, so I was just going to stand aside. That being said, that was your long target there based off of pre-market order flow. This was your long target right there. You can see you had about 1 split second and you had to get really lucky to get filled, but it tagged it and it went. I got nothing there. Now, here's where it got interesting in following process, right? Moving up, you can see right here, these two bars are our biggest delta. Again, I'm not going to do a lot of time explaining this other than to say this is what we were looking for, right? I knew now that we had to get, in order to move lower from here, it's only 9:14 a.m., you had to get underneath this 22.34 and this 22.39. You can see this is the first place where we closed underneath. This should have been my first short. I wasn't willing to short there because I thought we had still had a strong possibility of trend day up. I was looking for a pullback. I should have taken the trade. The risk on this trade here was essentially 2.5 points, a little bit larger than I normally take it here. Let me make sure that I'm telling you that correctly. The risk was 0.725 to I take it back. It was almost 4 points. That may have been why I didn't take it. And the reason why is when you have these two bars stacked on top of each other, they essentially become the whole area becomes resistance. And you can see the trade work perfectly, right? Closed underneath, backside tested, and then we rolled on down to the downside. But in order to take that trade, and this is the same concept or theme is going to play in the afternoon, and I'll show you why it was difficult. But at any rate, you either had to cut size to account for the stop because that was the proper stop was behind here, or not take the trade as it was. I didn't take the trade because without the Trump news, I really didn't think we were going lower, quite frankly, and it got absorbed pretty well. Now, where did I take my first trade? None of this was trade location because it simply didn't set up on the delta. As you can see, it just got really small and tiny, and we were just grinding through what was the initial opening rotation. But this is where it gets interesting back over here. So what you'll see through here, and again, these deltas are off because if we change this over to the U contract, these deltas are much better. But this was basically this bar right here where the volume was the biggest down bar, so it doesn't show up here. You're looking at numbers that don't really compute. This was I believe this was our biggest down delta bar over on the U contract. This was our first close above right here, right? And that was actually quite a strong bar. It looks quite different on the Z than it does the U. That'll get fixed up by Monday at the latest, tomorrow morning most likely, right? And so I long this trade right here, and what I was trying to do is get 2 points out of this trade, and you can see this is a long half here, the other half of the entry, which actually didn't get filled initially. Again, this had very light volume initially on this trade, so it looked different on this contract than it did in reality. So the reality is I got long here, half size, and then the rest of my long was sitting right back here. It simply didn't get filled on the U contract. The backside test just did not get filled. And what happened is up here when I was trying to get scaled out, wow, this looks, let me just see if I can do something here real quick and switch to, it's not going to be possible to switch to the U contract without destroying all this. So I'll just tell you how it went. I apologize. This is the biggest delta. This is where I got long right here on the close above. Half size, I was waiting for the backside test. When this pushed up for this trade over here for the long, I actually could not get a 2-point scale. I just missed, and I ended up bailing on the trade for a point, right? And you would have said, well, that's great, except it wasn't so great. And the reason why is if I had stayed patient over on the, again, this is a Z and the U, what ended up happening is we came back to test all the way back over here, and I would have gotten the second half of this trade filled. My average on the equivalency on the Z contract would have ended up being about 29.0350, more or less. And as you can see, it popped beautifully to the upside from there. So yes, I made a point on ES there. I totally blew the trade. And actually my monster trade today came on copper, not on crude. I mean, not on ES, excuse me. But the potential is there. I didn't get it right. Okay, so let me keep going through this pace. So what do I want to do tomorrow to fix that? Tomorrow, as I usually say, my goal is to take the entry using the half-half method, meaning half on trigger, half on the backside test of the bar that set up the trigger, right? And then target 2 points to cover what usually covers my risk, right? Gets my risk off. And then I either can leave stop as is or move stop up and ride the trailer up to my target, whatever it is above. That would have ended up today giving me 2 points, probably a 2-4-6 scale. As it is, I ended up with 1 point because I misexecuted. Shame on me. Get that fixed. If we go look at the top, and I think this actually got cleared up on top here, what you will see is as we were driving up, we had this, man, this was just so weird on this I apologize. I thought it would have looked normal, so this is hard to do in a flowing manner, but here, let me pull this together here real quick. Okay. When you look at this and you see us push up, this 733 became our biggest delta on the push up, and that became the biggest. This was actually the biggest delta of this sequence here. And what you'll see is when you're pushing up, you're looking to get back underneath. What you'll see here is it couldn't get underneath, and if you follow this order flow, right, see how it gets above, comes right back for the backside test, and then pushes up yet again. Now I'm going to scroll over just a bit more. You know where I have this set correctly? 2906, 290. Nope, I did here. You know what? I'm going to do something real quick. If you'll notice when we got up on top here later in the afternoon, wow, how late are we going here? Here we go. In the afternoon, there we go. You know what? This is totally awful, and I apologize because this is just simply not showing the same delta strength that the U contract came in. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Let's try this really fast. Yes. See if this will work. It doesn't roll it over automatically. Did that do it right? No, I'm stuck with Z. So I'll tell you how it ended up working out. If you look on top here, we ended up with, if you'll see right over here, we ended up with delta divergence over here right around 1 o'clock. See that right on top? And when we closed underneath that, see this move right here? So I'm sorry, this is a pretty horrible way to explain this tonight. So I'm sorry about that. I'm going to erase this real quick so I can show this to you really fast. Okay. Delta divergence right on top. We close underneath. This is a normal setup right here. See this? That is a normal setup. When we close underneath this, you want to do half, half, and that's your roll to the downside down into VWAP, if that makes sense. Okay? It looks different on this chart, so unfortunately this becomes effectively a pretty wasted trade review, and I apologize for that because Delta swapped, right? But what we ended up doing is once you got underneath here, we had a short somewhere in this location, and what you really wanted to get underneath on this chart, actually the biggest delta wasn't here. You wanted to get underneath these deltas over here to the left. When you closed underneath the first time, here's the problem with this. This was the first close underneath. This was the biggest delta in real world where the most of the volume was going off. You closed underneath. You had to allow for a test back to the top. You can see that test eventually rolled you all the way back down for a profitable trade, but not much of a profitable trade. You'll see where we got these delta divergences over here, this 1737 and this 1273. Both of those played out eventually. This was right at the end of the day, so you wouldn't have traded this. I apologize. But this one right here, where we had the delta divergence, closed underneath, backside tested, that was a perfect setup to the downside. I don't remember how I took it now because I'm not looking at the same chart anymore. The deltas are totally different on the different months. So I was short in the afternoon. I did get tagged out because I misapplied my stop. That was the only place I tried to make the correction. So on ES, I had half of it right and half of it wrong. I made a technical error at the end of the day. My goal was just to get back on process, and I was close. The one thing I do want to show, and I can show this really quick. Start. And I want to show this on Join Me. There we go. I mean, if y'all will bear with me for a second, I'll have this up. And let me get it going over here. I can be able to drag it off my other computer. Boy, don't you love it when things just don't go smoothly? There we go. Okay, other computer. There we are, much better. Okay, what I wanted to show you off this other computer. So this is where I can get my momentum divergences set up, and I want to show you both on NQ and ES. So when you look on ES coming in, there we go. So now the deltas are correct here. I don't know why they're so off on the other machine. Okay, so here we go. See when we pushed up into this 10 o'clock hour right here? See where we get these big deltas right here? So sorry for, let's see here. We'll fix this really quick. Okay, there we go. So see this right here? This is what I was trying to look for on the other machine. Okay, see when we're pushing up through here, and then I'm looking and I'm like, those are the biggest deltas from that rotation up. If you know how to read order flow or you know anything about order flow, getting underneath these deltas is really important. So I kind of just drew, and I want to show where I made my trading error and where I should have attacked this, because this shows it perfectly. And this is a much better way to figure this out. Okay, so when you have these bars all together, and if you look off to the left from earlier, we had it was all in the same location. 1698, 1354. Okay, it is not here, so we won't worry about it, and we'll just focus on this for now. You had to get below and close below on a red bar in order to get any chance of rolling to the downside, right? So what you'll notice is two things. First of all, I got no momentum divergence into the high like I did on NQ, and I'll contrast it in just a second. Got no momentum into the divergence into the high. When I finally got below, this is a valid trade location. Here's where I screwed up my stop. Your stop had to be 2 ticks behind that, okay? I screwed up. I put my stop right at the top at 06 even, actually just 1 tick underneath. I have no idea why I did that other than I was tired. I got tagged out on this trade right at the back, and I'm so mad I did not re-enter this trade. The entry on this trade was like this. Here, right? So 2901, 2903. That brings your average to 2902. Stop needed to be 2906.50. Put it at 2906. That lets it survive, right? And as you can see, even though the trade did not work out and it did not roll over, I assure you, you had to get underneath these guys in order to get any kind of roll to the downside. If you'll look when we pushed back up the second time, if I had the stop in the second place, this would have let me escape my what was eventually would have been my stop anyways. It just didn't want to roll down like it had the prior days, but it would have at least let me tag out of that trade with a small profit over here, right? As it was, I didn't get out with a profit. I got stopped. I needed to improve it. But I can also show you where we got long and how I screwed this up, because this was perfect. Okay, a lot of screwing up going on, right? If you look, biggest delta in the down move into the low. We close above, right? And then I get delta divergence. I'm looking for the first close above this delta divergence. If you wanted to be aggressive, okay, this was not the biggest delta of the day, which is why I hesitated on it. And I wanted to see how this played out. Two things made me want to get long down here. First of all, the momentum to the downside dried up significantly at the low. Number two, that delta divergence, that's a big delta divergence. The first close above it occurred right here. That's where I went long. Okay, so now I can explain this after a much terrible explanation earlier, right? And you're going to see exactly how I screwed this up. Okay, your stop could not go here. It had to be behind that delta plus 2 ticks. 1, 2. Notice it would not have gotten hit if you left your stop. The plan was to go long here and then load up with a second long there. That would have given me an average of approximately 28.9950, right? I would have had a total risk of just under 3 points, 2 3/4, totally reasonable. I miss my 2-point scale right here. It just couldn't get up there. And I tagged it and I break protocol. Really important. I break protocol and I take my 1 point. Okay. It was grinding. It was taking too long. I didn't feel great. And I bailed on the trade. What I should have done is stayed the course, added my second half of this position right here, right? Okay. Gotten upset, started cursing as it would have started coming in here and bemoaning my fate of getting stopped and wondering whether I should have moved the stop behind here or here. It turned out to be the right place. And then what would have happened out of that was I would have gotten my 2-point scale actually in the exact same place, because now my averages come back. That would have let me get my 2-point scale. Then I would have had a 4-point scale as we were moving up, and I would have been very nicely profitable on the day. Instead, I was left to figure out why I didn't execute that trade properly. So let me explain why I didn't execute that trade properly. I didn't feel well. It was already, excuse me, it was already 10:30 in the morning. It was taking forever to get these trades finished. And that was that, right? And I also missed, obviously, a very beautiful setup to the short side back over here. I was concerned we were in trend day up, which is an okay concern to have, right? Oh, and then I missed, this is where I said I was going to be done trading for the day up in here. I should have never entered this trade in the afternoon. I was just too tired to execute it effectively. Now, lastly, I want to show you one other thing. On copper, it was my highlight of the day. I highlighted it to the room. I work off a higher time frame in copper, okay? And we got a beautiful setup right here to the short side, but I missed it initially. So I want to show you this. I missed the initial roll down, which was worth almost $1,000 a contract. The reason I missed it, you'll see it's highlighted back over here to the left. The reason I missed it was because that's still early in the day. There we go. Had it highlighted. I was waiting for it. This rolled over when the Trump news came out about China. I totally missed my roll to the downside. This would have been my entry right here. These are really small range bars. They're 4 range, and if copper is moving really fast, you either have to stop limit in or you miss the trade, right? And I usually try to enter in when it's quiet. So when you move back, what you'll notice here is I highlighted when I came back up through here this morning. What you will see is when we rolled down, hold on one second, I wanted the backside test of that location. Hold on, let me find where the bars were that I was looking for. Let's clear this for a second. I know that was where I wanted it, which means it is hidden right in here. There we go. Okay, that's where I wanted to be. Below that, that's where I wanted to be short. You can see this is the first bar that closed underneath. There's simply no way to catch it, right? As we're rolling down to the downside, you'll see this is my next big area that I want to trade with. Look how the absorption's coming in at the low. We're losing momentum as we're pushing lower, right? However, I was too busy missing with the ES and NQ, and I did not catch my easy entries off the backside of that. So comes back up for another breath for a rollover. I take a short here with a stop just behind, and I get stopped out here. It costs me either $75 or $100 a contract, which is fine. In copper, that's part of the deal, right? As you're rolling over to the right side, I then get the biggest delta on the roll up, right? As soon as we are underneath it, I call out in the room. I said, you can short this 2770 right here. I am short in that 2770 area. And what you will see next is why copper is so awesome to trade when you get it right. And my target, and I pointed out in the room, that's my target to the downside, back over there to the left. And you see we just rolled beautifully to the downside. This is where I believe I covered right here just before I left for lunch. This move right here, this is $500 a contract. So I traded copper perfectly today. I took one stop. I had one win. My RR was, this is a 5-to-1 risk reward ratio on this trade. And I'll take that trade every single time. So still struggling on ES, working to get sharper. I'm doing actually quite well in copper. And again, where I've been struggling this week, guys, is taking my profits, right? So I did scale as we were rolling down here. My best scale is $500. I think I scaled $200, $300, and $500 on copper. I still did not execute ES at a high enough level like I wanted to. But again, I had the entries right. My exits sucked again today overall, net. And then I made a mental error at the end of the day. I put the stop in the wrong location. Areas to improve in for tomorrow. So the last note is when we roll over the futures contract, it gets harder, right, guys? The reason I'll say this again and again and again, your most important trade is the next trade that's coming up. The only thing that matters on that trade, since you don't know if it'll be a winner or a loser, even if you have a 90% win rate, you don't know if your next trade will be a winner or a loser. So what do? Don't worry about it. right? Know that your process works. Do the work. One of my coaching clients, right, Jimbo, who I coached with this afternoon, calls me and goes, Simon, I did 10 hours of homework this weekend. I know my win rate from the past 2 months is 69.4%. My RR is this. I know exactly what I'm looking for while I'm trading, right? When you know exactly what you're looking for, even if the trade doesn't work out, you're not scared, you're not fearful, or at least you should have a reduced sense of fear, right? Because you know exactly what you're looking for next, right? I'll give you a perfect example this evening on copper. I have one trade tonight. I am long off this bar right here, waited for the backside test, and I exited right here for, I think, $100 a contract or something like that. It's Asia, so I don't expect much great stuff to happen in Asia on copper. But that's a setup off of my larger time frame instead of my smaller time frame. Either way, the trade works on a consistent basis. That's the whole point of it. And the same thing with the half-half entry. When you're, I want to go back to ES for a second. Okay, guys, that half-half entry is important because it addresses a couple of things that cause a lot of traders difficulty. Okay, so even if back over here, so let's go back to this trade over here. A lot of times you get into a conundrum whether you should wait for the backside test, whether it's just going to take off without you. You know, you can't tell half the time whether it's just going to go zip straight up like this or come back for the backside test. The whole point of getting your stop down to 2 or 2.5 points, but still being able to take the trade, is on your trigger bar, which is this bar right over here, you take half the trade, right? You leave the other half laying back over here, right? And now you're not spending any energy trying to figure out whether you're trying to take the trade on top or behind, right? The problem is solved. You're not agonizing. If it doesn't pull back, you've got half the trade on. If it does pull back, you've lowered your cost basis and you've got a clear exit for the trade where you know it doesn't work. That is what you are looking for in trading. And additionally, the other thing that I did not put into my calculation here is on retests. You can see down here, there's just no momentum. Look at that. There's just no downside momentum in this thing when they're pushing back to the downside. I should have pressed the hell out of that trade. That was really probably the trade of the day in ES. The short got very difficult up here as we balanced. And if I could redo it, and I will be able to redo it, the trade's already forgotten, but tomorrow I have clear my notes. If I'm going to take the trade, be willing to take the stop, have it defined, use the half-half method for entry, exit, stop, look for the delta patterns that we're familiar with in the room, and execute at a high level. I don't expect tomorrow to be much easier than today because it's futures rollover. Whatever you're doing and whoever you are, find a mentor, take the shortcut. It takes a long time to get good at this if you're doing it by yourself, and there's a lot of good guys out there, including myself, that are willing to teach others and cut that training time down significantly, right? If you're looking at this and going, this makes no damn sense, realize that what a massive disadvantage you are because you don't understand what you're looking at here. You're at a massive disadvantage on this whole chart. And the reason why you're at a disadvantage on this whole chart is this is what the computers are operating off of. And if you're still over operating off of 5-minute bars and trend lines and a candlestick pattern off of a 5-minute chart and you're trying to day trade it, you're probably very, very frustrated. There's very few people who are succeeding at that. Overall, the game's evolved and you need to learn how to read order flow is what I would say to anyone who wanted to be successful as a day trader. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Have a wonderful day. If you'd like to visit us in the room, hit me in the email, tradertough@gmail.com. Sorry for the opening. I didn't expect this. My deltas are screwed up on this main computer. I'm going to have to get that fixed right now before I go to bed. So I need to get out of here, get that done, and go home and go to sleep. So talk to everyone in the morning. I'll have a market preview for everyone. See you later, guys.